Welcome on in. Big question here on Morning Kickaround, and want to take advantage of Brian being here. He spends a whole lot of time and creates a lot of content in the USL League One space. So, Brian, I ask you today's big question: what is USL League One?
Rob, that is a great question, and one that I am continuing to learn as this season goes. USL League One essentially kicked off in 2019. It's the third tier of American professional soccer. Soon, maybe to be fourth tier with USL Premier. I know you guys have talked a lot about that as we have gone, but maybe still third tier, depending on where Premier ends up in relation to MLS. But currently USL League One, third tier professional soccer here in the United States. It is a league that they started with 10 teams in 2019, and we are now 7 years in 2026, and there are 17 teams this year. There were supposed to be 21 at the beginning of the season, and you guys have covered that very well early on with teams that have come and gone and dropped out right before season started, with teams like South Georgia Tormenta and Fort Lauderdale United that maybe are coming back next year. We'll see how that all plays out. But it's been a fun league, man. It's from my perspective, just watching as a Major League Soccer fan, seeing these big clubs, big professional teams in big cities down to third tier, and I'm like, how is this going to go, right? But it feels so much more grassroots in the American soccer landscape. USL League One does, because every team has a local flair, local feel to it. They're all built very differently, which maybe we can get into a little bit here as we go. But USL League One has been a fun one for me to learn and follow this season, and the variety of teams, supporter groups, fan bases, media, and all that has been really fun.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I do get really excited with these teams in USL League One. We've talked to many of the founders of these teams, or people playing a big role in getting a lot of these up off the ground and running. Yeah, like you said, a big variety of teams, but there's so many big question marks about sustainability and viability of having a national footprint of a lower league. Because like you said, it is at its heart, some of the teams might be somewhat corporate minded, but at the heart of lower league sports, it's got to be grassroots. So there's kind of a little bit of a juxtaposition there. And then as it is, you feel like it's kind of, in my opinion, we're going to dig into what you think, but kind of seems like this is just like very early days of what it could become in the future. Because when USL brought out their plans for promotion and relegation, this is going to be like kind of almost the incubator part of this USL league system, right? And you've got to think that and it's been turbulent. There was supposed to be over 20 teams, and there's 17 teams, and that's already growth, but it's a little bit scattershot. I don't know if scattershot's the right word, but you hope that these teams are able to make it through, because you feel like if the more teams like these spread, you could actually have that regional solid base that American soccer has never really had.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, Rob. I think the pyramid, the USL pyramid, with USL League One being the base, it currently is not a stable base. And if you're going to build a solid program, a solid promotion relegation system, you have to have a solid foundation to build it on. And right now, USL League One has been historically, again, only 7 years in, pretty turbulent, with teams that have come and gone. And you have teams that are operating on a bit more of a shoestring budget, trying to hold things together. And you have teams that are a little bit more corporate minded and professional minded, with their eyes on the next league, the USL Championship, or even maybe move into USL Premier as that comes into play. So you have just such a variety of teams and ownership groups and expectations in this league that I think, as it continues to grow, we may see some shift and some movement towards maybe a little bit more, not that it's not a professional league, but a little bit more professionalism in as far as ownership groups and ideas of where the teams can go, right? So right now, with USL League One, you're pretty well locked into USL League One, so you build for this league. When promotion relegation enters the fray and enters the conversation, it'll be interesting to see which teams say we're content here and we're going to play in USL League One, and which teams are going to push to move up and push to get at top of the table and move up. Not that anybody's going to write it off, but I think some teams will go about it very differently than other teams, at least in what I see this year. What are your thoughts on that when promotion relegation comes in? Does it shift what USL League One currently is?
Oh, yes. I mean, when promotion relegation comes in, it'll definitely change how this USL League One looks, because in theory, there could be almost limitless USL League One teams. And if this is to work right, there should be dozens and dozens of these teams all playing in a localized format, and to where like Midwest team plays each other, West Coast, East Coast. Like, I don't think that there should be, except for maybe like playoffs sort of thing, I don't think teams should be traveling across the country, which they are doing now. There's teams, for example, guys, there's team in Boise, Idaho, which is way up there in the northwest of the country. And their very first match as a club, they went to Sarasota, Florida, which is way down there in the southeast of the country, complete opposite corners. And I don't think any other country has a third division matchup with that sort of gap. I mean, if you want to like mirror things that happen in other countries, a third division team is at the very most going for a couple hours, right? They're not hopping on a plane that lasts plane trip that lasts a whole day. So that's the sort of thing. So USL League One, if promotion relegation goes well, should look nothing like how it does right now. Like, this should be a huge league with a whole bunch of, conferences or divisions from there. For context, as it is, this league, like you said, was created and launched in 2019. There's been at least 6 teams shutter or self-relegate themselves to the amateur leagues, and there's been some MLS reserve teams come and go, and a couple of defections to MLS Next Pro. But before we kind of dig into kind of the varieties of the ownership groups, just like at a purely base level, someone's like flips on a USL League One game and they're like, what am I watching? I kind of where are these players sourced from, and kind of like, what is the path to players getting to this level?
Yeah, a lot of these guys have been here in this league for a while. Some are coming from down from USL championship teams that have been around a while. So, some of these rosters are built from, experienced veteran players that are maybe not ready to make that step to championship, or they've maybe lost a step in championship and come back down to USL League One, provide leadership, and they're good players in this league. Fort Wayne specifically has built their roster very differently than anyone else in this league, because it's a lot of unproven college players coming up from, many of them played USL League 2 last year, but they've reached out to I think there's more international players coming into USL League 1 now. So Fort Wayne has a number of guys that played in like Coventry Academy and Arsenal Academy that weren't getting that look to move up into the professional ranks. So this was an opportunity for them to dip their toes in the water of professional soccer, get a feel for it. So I do think you're going to see, at least right now, we're seeing a variety of ways that teams are building their rosters. When it becomes more of a local league or local conferences, I think you're probably, I'm guessing here, going to see a lot more local talent pumped into these teams, because now you've got a professional team within 30 minutes, 60 minutes of you. I think it's for us in Fort Wayne, we've got young talent seeing professional soccer in our city for the first time, or at least for the first time in a long time on a large field, right? And it's creating a vision. It's creating, a dream for a young player that I don't have to go to the Premier League to play. I don't have to go to the Bundesliga to play, or even MLS. I've got professional soccer right here, and this is what it could look like. So I do think we'll see that shift. How long that's going to take, I don't know. But right now, a lot of veteran teams and a few very young teams right now. So roster builds are kind of all over the place.
Yeah, kind of in the undiscovered country sort of a thing of talent procurement. We heard from Boise saying that they were going on scouting trips abroad and doing all sorts of things and finding players through a broader scouting net, while the coach out there kind of brought some players in from other stops in his coaching journey. I got to say, the head coach for Fort Wayne, wow, I love hearing from him and the way he coaches. I can see how he's gotten a tune out of those young players in Fort Wayne. And actually, with the way that Fort Wayne has kind of done well at home with those young players, and to your point, if this has become localized leagues, they're going to have to utilize local talent to a degree, for how soccer works and talent building works. Even teams at the highest level need a mix of players in their backyard and bigger names. But if this is going to be a third or fourth tier pro league, you're going to have to resource get players in from your own areas. But with the young players, I mean, you could look at that and be like, oh man, are these guys even pros? Like but with them kind of like finding their feet here, and they've gone on a bit of a run in their home games, would you say that gap between like the college and maybe the elite amateur level and the League One level is a little blurry there, like the step up to League One level?
I think so. And I think part of that is because there's so many international players playing Division I college soccer here in the United States, and even NAIA, a lot of rosters that are fully international players and not American players. And so I do think that line is getting blurred. I think you're seeing a lot of USL clubs that are USL2 teams that are playing at really high levels because of the talent they've assembled from Division I, Division II, NAIA soccer teams. And so as they move up into USL League One, they already have a lot of that experience, I believe. And so I do think it's blurring a little bit there. But I think what we're seeing in Fort Wayne, not to like bring it hyper local, but I think for the sake of an example, an illustration, right? Like we have young players that struggled early on, and because they're playing veterans who have been around, that played 6-7 more years than them. And so the soccer IQ, the style of play is a little bit more advanced, a little bit more experienced. And Fort Wayne found their feet, and they went on this 11-match unbeaten streak. Now, 6 draws in that and 5 wins. But it's a team that, again, was unproven. Nobody really knew what to expect from these guys. And they came out, found their feet, and they went on this run. We're seeing this midseason stretch, which I'm really paying attention to, and got a chance to talk to Coach Avery from Fort Wayne about it, that there's been a struggle, several games lost in a row against some top teams in the league that maybe we fared better against the first time we played them. So I think you're seeing first-time professionals. You talked about the travel. Like, these guys have never traveled this far. They've never done this cross-country trip twice in 2 weeks, to play these games. So legs are getting tired, legs are getting heavy. The mentality of this long season, like, you can play a college season in the fall and you can train the rest of the year, but playing nothing competitive the rest of the year is different than playing a competitive season March to October, or potentially even into November. So we're seeing some adversity right now with this Fort Wayne squad, and because I think it's a young squad, and we'll see how they bounce back on the other side of it.
Through your work on Fort Wayne Footy, you've talked to creators from surrounding other teams, and you've done plenty of interviews. Kind of what teams we talked about, kind of like player sourcing, how there's been a variety, but as far as like team approach and the outlook, kind of what kind of things have stood out to you in that regard?
Yeah, what I've learned is the teams that have been around for a little more than Fort Wayne has been seem to have much more of a grassroots upswell of, there was an ownership group that came together, made an announcement, and all of a sudden there was a supporter group that came together, and there was a partnership there, and it was community engagement, community support to get around this club before they played their first match. Even a year and a half before many of these teams played their first match, there was already a growing supporter group. And I love that, right? It's a community that has taken ownership of a team that has yet to come into existence.
That's cool,
and I love that. So I remember talking to Sean Fecteau from up there in Portland, Maine, about their team, the Portland Hearts of Pine, and how they had a lot of town hall meetings where the owners would go and they'd have these town hall meetings and they talk about team name and the crest and their colors and all this stuff, right? And I love that. And so a lot of the teams that have been around I've heard stories of those things happening. I think there's I don't want to say a trend, because this may be the first year it's happened and it may not happen again. But there seems to be more of a focus on, I talked about professionalism maybe a little bit ago, in how Boise and how Fort Wayne have built their teams this year. And I may be way off base here. Maybe other teams have done this, but Boise went out and they got Nate Miller, an experienced coach, with experienced players. You said they sent out scouts everywhere abroad to look at experienced players. We want to build a team that is ready to win now. We built a stadium. We built this fan base, and it's coming along as they go. 7,200 fans, sellouts almost every game. Like, it's incredible what's happening in Boise. But they built a product on the field that was proven. They just had to put the pieces together. Where Fort Wayne built their roster very differently, as we've already talked about, but they built their front office with a lot of professionals that have been in the sports marketing and sports business for a number of years here locally with the Comets and Tin Caps and other teams. And so they built a front office that's ready to win, right? And so I don't know how other teams previously have built that, but it seems to be more of maybe a top down, like, we want to build something here, and we're going to engage fans, and the fan base is growing. We've got a new stadium. We're ready to go. So it seems to be a little bit different in how these two clubs have been built than the stories I've heard from around the league.
So we talked about the variety, and I think that must be the kind of the theme of this. What is USL League One? That keeps coming to mind. So we talked about the player sourcing and kind of like the corporate versus grassroots approaches across the league, but there's also the stadium, the venue variety. Fort Wayne building a brand new shiny stadium, Boise kind of like making an existing venue very much into their own right, and very unique stadium. They're building one in Corpus Christi, and then we just heard a couple weeks ago about plans for a new one for Portland Hearts of Pine. So we want to make this an evergreen segment, but as we're frozen in time here, Fort Wayne has kind of took the lead for brand new stadia, but there's some more to come.
Yeah, I love it. I'm also cautious, right? And I've heard you and Jason talk about the teams. Many of the teams that have folded in this league are teams that got really ambitious, built stadiums, and then they couldn't sustain, and they're out. And so you have teams like Fort Wayne and Boise in their first year building stadiums. But again, I think their plans are not, let's stay in USL League One. I think they have their eyes set on, we're moving forward. You don't build a 9,000 seat stadium, I don't think, for third tier American soccer. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it'll grow to be that. But I think you've got your eyes set on something more in the future. I don't know that, but the conversations I've had lead me to believe that. And so maybe we'll see more of this, right? As USL League One grows, I don't know that you get a lot of teams building stadiums like this that plan to stay in USL League One. There's not a lot of cities maybe that have space for stadiums or funding for stadiums. So this may not be, an ongoing thing, other than teams that are already looking like, we're going somewhere else. We're not staying here long.
Yeah, I mean, a stadium and a venue is a kind of a statement of intent that you're going to be here in the future. If you're renting somewhere, or if you're just a tenant, that you could just get an email and the team's gone tomorrow. We didn't renew our lease at so and so field, and we're gone tomorrow. You build a stadium, or you get into some sort of public private relationship, and there's times and commitments there, planting your flag. And to your point, like building a stadium, you think that is a marker for a hunger for more, that we want to build beyond that. But at the same time, maybe the entities creating or providing that funding just kind of want to lay that marker down to show their intent for the future. And maybe just locally, maybe Fort Wayne. So promotion relegation, hypothetical, maybe that doesn't happen.
Right.
Does Fort Wayne have the support locally as it is in the third division of American soccer to fill that up week in, week out for years and years, just in the league as it is right now?
I believe Fort Wayne does. It's a strong soccer market, even though it's a small soccer market. There are just a handful of youth clubs, but they're all competing at the national level, which has been so fun to watch. Boys and girls clubs at the local youth level competing at nationals this year. Multiple teams from each club, and so you're seeing strong soccer at early ages, which means families are getting behind this. Families are already, like it or not, I know the conversation around, pay to play and club soccer and youth sports right now is crazy, and it's a really hot topic, but parents are willing to invest in the game. And so I think as they continue to invest, I think that's only going to grow here in Fort Wayne. And so to be fair, in this conversation, at least locally in Fort Wayne, building this 9,000 seat stadium, maybe it's big. It'll take us a few years to get there. I think we'll fill it. But they did start at a local high school. They moved to a local NAIA college, and there really wasn't another stadium they could move to fill. We were getting full at these other stadiums, so it was either build something new or either drop out or find a new place to play. And I think Fort Wayne made the right move. And let's build a stadium where we have room to grow. And we're not filling the stadium yet in Fort Wayne, but we have, for many games, 3 times more than we had average fans last year in there. So it's a lot of growth in 1 year for sure.
Yeah, that's a huge step up, and just very ambitious. You love to see that ambition and that funds going towards a club in this game, because up until the last couple of years, the sort of investment and filling up the base of a soccer pyramid as it is wasn't even really considered. And so part of Fort Wayne building the stadium is super exciting. I love that there was that big jump up, and then just having a stadium of your own means at the very least you control your own destiny, so to speak. And then one thing to add on to this, what is USL League One conversation, and something that I thought as far as created competitions was the USL League Cup. It was called the Jägermeister Cup. This year it's the Prinks Tires Cup, but that has actually afforded quite a few teams to maybe generate. So this is a competition where it's not involved in league, but you play USL League One teams and USL Championship teams play against each other, which actually has opened the door to more local rivalry possibilities.
Absolutely. Back to the top of the show, when I was going to ask you about this DCFC rivalry potential coming down to Fort Wayne. Yeah, it's been fun having these USL Championship clubs in the Ruoff Mortgage Stadium, we call it here in Fort Wayne. We did a show, Fort Wayne Footy did a show with some podcasters from Indianapolis before the Indy 11 match. And we talked about, how does this become a real rivalry? Like, it's first game, big brother, little brother, whatever. And we saw a game that was tied up in the 91st minute, went to penalties, and you see a USL Championship team winning it. And you're like, okay, now this is a real rivalry. There's really heated emotions now, even though we won't see each other than the USL Cup potentially for years. But I do love this inter-league competition. You see rivalries like that across the country. That was just the one we had locally here. But I do think you get an opportunity to build some of these regional rivalries that you don't get to see in USL League One when your closest team is 8 hours away from you, right? And so now you've got USL Championship teams within an hour and a half, within 2 hours, that you may see year to year in this competition. So I love it for that reason.
Yeah, the conversation that comes to mind is when we interviewed the folks at AV Alta, which is a USL League One team in rural California. And this competition and the Open Cup provided them way more local competition options than the league itself, which you hope something that works through, but they did provide them the opportunity to play a lot of California teams that are in the championship and otherwise. But Detroit City FC versus Fort Wayne FC becoming a rivalry in the future, that would be exciting. And I just have to take a step back and just kind of gauge where American soccer is right now. We went from 0 soccer-specific stadiums to within where I am in Michigan. Fort Wayne is there's almost built. There's going to be one in Grand Rapids here shortly, and Detroit City FC just started building theirs. So within like an hour and a half, 2 hours, there's going to be 3 brand new soccer-specific stadiums, which is just, let's appreciate where we're at here for the moment. But as far as coming back to the original question of what is USL League One, it's hopefully what the beginning seeds to a much larger thing in the future. It's facing difficulty. USL, the entity itself, is taking on a lot of big kind of unprecedented challenges. They are trying to build a base of a system as the system is operating. So it's kind of an interesting future ahead.
Yeah. I've heard people talk about it as like building a plane while you're in the air, right?
Yeah.
Like you're trying to piece it together as you're flying. I do think they have big plans. I was skeptical as an MLS fan. I was skeptical of USL soccer coming into this, but what I've seen now gives me hope for the future of the league. And just again, the seeming trend towards building teams, building clubs in local areas that are sustainable. And so looking at how are you, what's your infrastructure before you play your first match, I think are good questions to be asked to grow this league and to grow the stadium, or to not to grow the stadium, but to grow this league, to grow this regional rivalries and to grow this league. I think it's a good move in the right direction.
So hopefully everyone out there that is new to this conversation and new to USL League One is now more educated on this. Thank you, Brian, for bringing your knowledge from Fort Wayne Footy and for your insights here on today's big question. Folks,
Rob, can I just say one last thing? Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off. Like, if you're looking for a fun league to watch, like, let's just get it to base level. Like, what is USL League One? It is a ton of fun to watch because each team has its local flair, has its local supporters group. It's different in every stadium you go to. It's different in every stadium you watch a game in. And so it's just straight up, it's good soccer, and it's a lot of fun soccer in a different way than the top leagues are in the States and elsewhere.